Hi, so my name is Amber, and I am going to talk a little bit about homeschooling today. Um, I am by no means an expert, nor am I an expert at giving videos, but I'm trying, and I hope my content is good enough to make up for my lack of voice coaching, voice training, videography, and whatever else. Okay. So, a little bit about me, just so you know who I am, where I'm coming from. I started homeschooling my oldest for kindergarten. I probably started homeschooling before she was 5, obviously, just because, we did preschool and stuff, and I had started to think about it. The reason I started looking into homeschooling is because my roommate in college, she wasn't homeschooled, but her younger siblings were, and her cousins all were, and they were all amazing, and they were reading books I had never heard of, and they were all played musical instruments, and they were all really nice. And I remember feeling a bit betrayed when I got to college because I was one of the top students in my high school. And they were like, "Oh, you're so smart." I took the AP class and everything. And when I got to college, I felt like there was just like a lot of just basic stuff that I didn't know. And that really frustrated me because I did everything that they told me that I should. And so, when I met these homeschool kids and they were reading books I'd never even heard of, I was like, why haven't I heard about this stuff? So that's what started my journey into homeschooling, and it's been quite the journey. There's been a lot of things, how it's turned out, that have not been how I thought they would be. It's definitely not as easy as I thought it would be, but it has overall turned out pretty well. Also, I think one of the problems with homeschooling is it can be a little bit, people get kind of fixated on if you're actually doing real homeschool or if you're doing not real homeschool. I don't know. Whatever aspect in life, whatever ideology you choose, there's always going to be groups that are like, "Oh, this is the one true way," or "This is the one true way." And the reality is that we're all different, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. So with my experience with my kids, we actually have sent them to public school off and on. Last year, as an example, everybody went to public French school because we moved to France because we want to learn French and let the kids experience another culture. Excuse me. I grew up in Mexico, and probably of all the things that I did as a teenager and as a young person, growing up in Mexico, and I did not realize it until years later, really is what made me question things, I guess, and made me more open-minded. Because when you grow up in another culture, you just automatically know that there's not one perfect way to do stuff. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in this, "Oh, this is the way," kind of a thing. And the reality is that there's a lot of things that work, and also there's a lot of things that some people like to do that other people wouldn't want to do. I am really enjoying the time here in France. It's been difficult. The language is definitely the hardest, but it's really fun to be able to speak to people and understand what's going on at the store. And I feel like I'm starting to understand the culture and the people better and to kind of be a part of it. It's a really nice culture too. But anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of people. In fact, there's a lot of people that I know, some friends of mine in high school. I remember there's one of my friends in high school, and she said, "Well, I could never leave here because I just love the mountains too much." So to me, I could never stay there. I would feel claustrophobic in a way. But for her, she would feel she wouldn't want to do what I'm doing either. So who's right? Neither. We're both right. We're both right. We both are doing what we want to do, and we have the results that we're going for and that we want. In fact, I just saw her a few weeks ago, and it was fun. So anyway, I'm glad for all my friends, and you know, the great thing about it too is that that's why we have friends, and that's why maybe we listen to podcasts and watch videos and stuff, because it opens up our horizons and we get to experience things and learn about things that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. So maybe eventually I'll talk about being an expat, an American expat with 8 kids in the French countryside. Maybe a little bit about being an American expat as a kid. I moved to Mexico when I was 7. So anyway, that's a little bit about me, and so homeschooling and why I decided to homeschool. And then also, like, just whatever you do, like, I am not going to proclaim that I'm a homeschooling expert. Yes, I have homeschooled. I have done it for a lot of years. I've sent my kids to public school too. Sometimes they needed to homeschool. Sometimes they needed to public school. Do I prefer homeschooling? Yes, by far. There's so much, I so much prefer homeschooling. But a lot of that is my personality. Like, I don't like being told what to do. I don't like getting up every single day at the same time. It was so hard when I had to have my kids up and ready every single day. I mean, I didn't like it. So and some people will be more scheduled as homeschoolers. Other people are going to be more flexible. And so it just depends on what you want to do. And I think that's the beauty of homeschooling, is you can be super scheduled, and you can do online classes and get different curriculums and hire tutors to do it, to help your kids, so that you stay on a schedule. Or you can be a little more laid back and just have your goals and then take it day by day. And if it's not working, then you cut back. Or, if this day you just don't want to do math first, guess what? You can do reading instead. I don't care. As long as at the end of the day you've got it all done, that's fine. And for me, as long as you are learning the material and you're able to get into college, if that's your goal, which I think for a lot of people it is, although, boy, that's kind of been debated lately with the price of college, and do you really get out of it? Makes you wonder. For my kids, college is definitely something that they all want to do, because they're not really getting a traditional social experience in high school, being in France. So college is kind of their opportunity to go and make friends and be on their own and kind of make some connections. So that's the main thing that I want to put across, is like, I don't want to come across as an expert. A lot of homeschooling experts I found are kind of pushy and kind of cultish in a way, and very non-open-minded. And it's super frustrating. When there was a time when my oldest hit about 12, and our good homeschool friends and their best friends moved away, and I had twins at the same time. Well, I guess she wasn't 12. My oldest was 10 when I had the twins, and then she turned 11. And then that year, our friends all moved away, and so we just didn't have the support. And I think that with homeschooling, it is important that you have some support. Right now, we don't have any homeschool support where we are, but because we've been homeschooling so long and we've had support along the way, and my oldest is doing so well and had such a great year at college. The other kids know where it leads. Plus, they all went to public school last year, and none of them wanted to go back this year. Part of it is that it wasn't that they had a bad experience, because a lot of it was good. And they did learn a lot of French, although they didn't come out nearly as fluent as I hoped they would. French is really hard, and the French system is really interesting. They don't have any English as a second language or French as a second language classes here for people who learn French. And the one second language class that they did have, my girls talked to a girl who'd been in it like 3 years and she still couldn't speak French. Plus, they tend to have a lot of refugees, so they just don't have probably a lot of support to really be able to study and learn like the way my kids would. So anyway, so they didn't have a lot of support. The high schoolers had one class once a week, I think, with a tutor, and the same with my boys. Finally, after like 5 months of being in school, they got one of their teachers offered to help them once a week, and so that's how that happened. But other than that, they really didn't have much help. And then the elementary school kids, my 5th grader, his teacher made him speak, and she had extra worksheets. And so and then my 6th grader, his English teacher had him do everything in French that the kids were learning in English. So those two learned French the best. The 1st graders learned how to read French really well, and their pronunciation is really good. And they could understand a lot, but they weren't able to speak. And their teacher told me that she probably spoke too much English to them. And then the 4-year-old, he only went part-time. That was good for him because he cried every day. But it was good for him. None of my other kids, I wouldn't have sent my other kids to school at age 4, but this little guy, he really needed it. He was a handful, and it was good for him to have another authority figure and to kind of calm him down and train him and help him not be so bossy. So, but he's super sweet and he's a lot easier now, but he wasn't a very easy kid, and the teacher told him, "I am the boss of this classroom." And he told her, "No, I'm the boss." So that's, 4-year-olds. And so it was really good for him too. So there you go. So there's an example, but all the other years we homeschooled. And what do I like about it? First of all, I really like the flexibility. I get to pick the curriculum. One thing that I realized, and another reason I looked into homeschooling, is I had 4 kids under the age of 5. And I didn't want to just send my kids to school. I wanted to be involved. And I didn't know how that was going to work. If I had 3 babies, and how am I going to go on a field trip? Like, it's just not going to happen. You can't go and volunteer at the school. And then, years pass, other years, and the kids went to elementary school. And I found that as a parent, you're really not that involved. Your kids come home and you help them with their homework, and that's like an hour. And honestly, the amount of time that you spend that hour helping them do their homework, you could probably help them learn the whole thing. Like that time that you spend doing helping them do their homework, that's probably the most that they've learned that day. So, because in a classroom setting, and that made me feel good because, I have a lot of babies, and it's hard to homeschool when you have babies, with the older kids. It's difficult because you still have to feed everybody lunch. You still have to clean the house. And you got to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. And I don't know where the time goes, but anybody with kids knows how fast the day can go and you feel like you've done nothing. Like I would look around my house and I'd be like, how is it that I'm so lazy? Because my house is such a wreck, like all the time. So I started keeping track of it, and this is when my twins were babies. They were like 2, and that was the year that we sent the older kids to public school because they were just so curious because we didn't have support. So yeah, so that's what I was going to get back to. Our homeschooling friends moved, and then, the only groups I could find were of a philosophy that was kind of like what I've been describing, which is like, oh, we're the best. This is the best way to homeschool. Oh, we're going to be the leaders of the future. And I didn't think they were really doing that much. And like, it's fine if they want to do that, but they were very sort of cliquish, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that they looked down at me for not doing it their way. Like, we're all homeschoolers. Like, so what if you do it this certain way and you read this certain book? So I like this math program. Wow, we're both doing math. Like, I didn't understand the difference. So anyway, I couldn't find any other groups for my daughter. She was 11, going on 12-ish. And so I called my friend another friend who had actually gone to high school with, and asked her, what are you doing because I need something for this kid. Her best friend moved and she's sad and we don't have a whole lot else going on. Well, and not only that, we also had some other negative interactions that we had to deal with from church specifically, which was really unfortunate because those are the places that you would think that you would have support, but that's not how it was for us. So anyway, I asked this lady, she said, oh yeah, we're doing this literature class and it's really great, and it's fine if you just want to draw a picture if they're not ready to write an essay, which I'm like, yeah, I think they should be able to write an essay. And like, what, a picture? But okay, fine, whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, that sounds good. And that sounds fine. And she's like, but we're full. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? The one homeschool group in the area is full. I mean, please. So I was like, forget it. I'm never doing anything with that group. And with that, like, okay, so never say never. But anyway, with groups that are like that, like, that's not worth it. So anyway, we moved and we found a better group and we made new friends and it was good and everything. And then eventually we left Utah and went to New Hampshire. New Hampshire was an excellent state to homeschool in because they have a whole virtual learning academy program. So it's online classes with an actual teacher who would check up with the kids. And so that relieves so much work for me because they had to report back to their teacher and they have tests and everything. It was fabulous. And there were lots of groups. Our town even had a science class. So it was a lot more accepted and it was a lot more like actual academic stuff and not so much like, aren't we cool type of stuff. It was what we found in that one area in Utah. But yeah, our other co-op was really good. So anyway, so I guess the point of me telling you these stories, and this is just my experience too, is that there's not a perfect way to homeschool. There's lots of different personalities out there. And there's lots of different groups. And maybe, my friend, she really loves her group, which for me, like, I could not do that. Like that, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in a group where I'm like, oh, we're the leaders. But for her and for her family, that worked for them. So yay for them. And I don't think well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say if I think she's a leader person or not. So I'm not going to. So anyway, but the point is, like, a lot of these people, they found it very beneficial and it was really helpful for them. So maybe they felt, um, like it had something for them. What it was, or I don't know. I don't know. That wasn't for me. But what worked for me and what I like to do and what I like may not work for you, and that's okay. And so that's just kind of the point. That's kind of the point of this podcast and this lecture series is I just want to put my voice out there to say, here's another way. And it's not like I'm all homeschool or all public school. I'm kind of in the middle. And like what I want is results. I want my kids to learn. But before that, I want my kids to be good. I want them to have strong characters. I want them to be nice. I want them to be hard workers. I want them to be persistent and diligent. I don't want them to give up right away. I want them to be able to get along with people. And I want them to not have baggage, to not have stuff that holds them back or they think they're not good enough or whatever. And, it's interesting because now having gone through this whole thing, went through the whole thing with my oldest, who's now 19, and she just finished her first year of college. And she did great. She's a music major. She plays the organ. And she wants to be a composer. And she is super talented. And I'm excited to see what she ends up doing in her life. She would love to do music for movies. So, that being said, so I've been through this. And I will say too, like, it is a lot of research. And there is an element of experimentation that goes on too. And so with this podcast, I hope that I can share with you what I've learned and maybe save you some time that way so you don't have to go and try all these different curriculums. I've tried enough and I know enough that I can probably tell you, which ones might work for you and which ones might not, and what things are good and what things are not, or at least about them enough, and then you can decide. And, so the first kids were the hardest. When I got to my boys, I have the 2 girls, and then I have 6 boys in a row. And when I got to the 3rd and 4th kid doing Singapore math, that's what we've chosen to do. It's easy. Like, oh yeah, I remember doing this problem. Oh yeah, everyone gets stuck on this problem. And now we know nobody passes the test the first time. So, it's just a lot easier, and I'm not as stressed doing it because I've already picked my curriculum. Whereas when the girls were little, I had to spend a lot of time looking at curriculum, trying curriculum. Oh, this isn't really working. Let's try something else. And then like the stuff that has worked really well, like there's a website called the mathworksheetsite.com, SITE. And that thing, I have used that for since the oldest was in kindergarten. And you can go in there and type in numbers and it will make worksheets of addition problems, subtraction problems, multiplication, and division. And you can even pick like which numbers you want to be in there and stuff. And I have used that. I just used it this week. There's also a 5-minute drill for when they're learning their times tables. So it's a lot easier having gone through it. And so that's what I'm going to try to do with this podcast, is just kind of let you know what's worked for me, and so that you can make a better decision for you and figure out what will work for you. Because I will say that one thing that has been disappointing over the years is to watch some of my friends give up with it, because it is a lot of work, but I think a lot of them gave up because they didn't think they were doing a good enough job. And the state that our public schools are in right now, and watching the people that come out of there and knowing what I was taught when I was there, and then looking at the kids coming out, and, you know, uh, if you taught the kids nothing, they're going to be ahead of where they are coming out of public school. Some of these kids, like, they're in school, and like the stuff they're learning about themselves, and like what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, like it's so off that they would have been better like not learning anything, honestly, or just spending time outside and learning like how nature works, because a lot of these kids, like, they don't know, and it's really sad. And so I hate to see people give up on homeschooling just because they feel like they're not doing well academically. Another thing with homeschooling that I think is really important to acknowledge is that, and this should be an education, and, you know, I like to read about innovations like in Finland, and I think there was a school in Japan where the kindergartners are like outside most of the day and doing all this outdoor stuff. I think that's so important for kids, and it's so underrated. But one of the best things you can give your kids is time to just be, and time to be able to go outside and listen to the birds. You can hear them now. Hear those birds? Anyway, so it's not just academics that you're doing as a homeschool parent, and it's not just academics when you send your kids to school either. And, you know, I hope maybe this can be helpful for people who do send their kids to school, because they need to recognize that school, public school as it is now, is going to cover some academics, but that's about it. They're probably not going to do much character development. If you have a good teacher, and maybe for the most part in elementary school, you'll get some of that, but by high school, maybe a little. I mean, it's hard to function if you don't have good character. So in that regard, yeah, you know, and, you know, it's true. Not everybody, there are some people, it doesn't matter if you do homeschool with them or public school or anything else, they're just going to learn. There's some kids that are just smart. They can just pick up a book and they just are interested and they just learn. And there's other kids who they don't want to. Like, my son went through the whole year at French school and didn't learn French. He was surrounded by it every day. But the kid spoke just enough English, and he was at that age, 15, and kind of shy, not quite ready, you know. So he didn't learn French, and it's hard for him. So this year we have him home, and he has a French tutor, and he's doing so much better, and he's learning a lot and doing really well. But so there you go. I mean, there's no perfect bullet here, and so I think what you have to do as a parent is you have to what's the word? I lost my train of thought. You have to really look at your kid and see what they need and see if you can help them get it. And that is, to me, what homeschooling is all about. So if you send your kid to public school, maybe that's your way of covering the academics, and then you still cover the character development. And, you know, a lot of people have done that very successfully. They work on Saturdays, and they have after-school activities that they feel that are important for their kids. They have a ranch. They take them out in nature. So anyway, so yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. So the next lecture, we will talk about character development, like what sorts of things help with that. We'll talk about life skills. Let me open up my page. Okay. Yeah, life skills are also things that they need to learn. Government in our day and age especially is important. Business, everybody's going to have to be their own business person. Academics, but then there's also physical, health, nutrition, fitness, and then culture, which is languages, arts, music, and travel. And so I'll go through and talk about each one of those and how you can do it, and then also kind of how, so now you have all these things and you have all these goals and you have all these things you want your kids to learn. The good thing is they don't have to do it overnight. You do have 18 years. And, you know, they learn a lot more in their high school years than they do in their elementary school years, although that is debatable. But if you can get that character down when they're young and they learn to work hard and persevere when they're young, when they're older, those traits carry on. And then their brains are more developed and they can learn faster and better and everything. So we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about what they need to know at each grade level. Basically, in my opinion, there's like some foundational things that everybody needs to know. Math, reading, writing, a little bit of history, basic history, a little bit of science, basic science, how things work. That's pretty much it academically. And then if you're a hard worker, like you, if you have that basic knowledge, then you can figure out other things. You can start to learn on your own. And that's what a lot of this is getting them ready so that they can learn and do things on their own. So, thank you for listening. I hope this much has been helpful for you. I do love homeschooling. I do love the time that I get to spend with my kids. I do enjoy them a lot. There have been years when I'm like, man, I'm doing a terrible job. They're not that like independent and free thinking. They love playing video games more than they like, you know, building things. But as they get older, they do grow out of that. I think they'll always like to play video games. But you know, computers are a big part of our family. My husband is a developer, and so it's important. And anyway, so thank you for listening. Like I say, I'm not an expert, but I do hope that I've given you some nuggets here, some things to think about in your own life, and help you on your homeschooling journey, as well as help me on mine, because I think the hard part being on this end, where your older kids are pretty much done and through and really diligent and working, is to keep on going with the younger ones. Like, oh, I'm not done. I still have a 5-year-old. Still have to teach him how to read. So, anyway, but it's great, and it's awesome to see them grow and improve. And so this is a reminder for me too of how great that is, and what a great adventure and what a great opportunity it is to be able to spend time with your kids and help them learn and grow and build those relationships and you know, build your family. So anyway, thanks for listening. I will see you next time. Bye.